This monthly wrap-up was brought to you by candy that was supposed to go to trick-or-treaters. The calories don't count if they're meant for somebody else. Hi, my name is Bea and welcome to my channel, Mama Needs to Read Romance. I forgot to welcome you to my channel again. I did this last time on my wrap-up. I get so excited about my silly beginning that I totally forget to do any kind of an intro. Anyway, I am happy to talk to you about the books that I read in October. I wanted to do a lot of spooky reads. I read 9 paranormal romance, 1 fantasy romance, and 1 historical romance for a total of 11 books. That's not a whole lot, but partly because 1, we were busy doing all of the Halloween things, and 2, most of the books I read were on Kindle Unlimited, so I was physically reading these, which is a lot more time consuming. I only gave 1 book 5 stars. I have 5 4 or 4.5 star books. I had 2 3 or 3.5 star books, 2 2-star books, and 1 1-star book. I'm going to put chapters at the bottom of this video in case you've already heard me talk about one of these and you just want to move on to the next thing. I'm also going to do some of the spoilers at the end because there's a few other things I want to say, but I don't want to ruin anything for anyone. So I'll save some extra thoughts for the end of the video in case you're interested. I'm going to start with the book that I love the most and then go down to the book that I liked the least. My favorite book of the whole month and my new romance husband is Devraj Kumar of the Stay a Spell series, book 2, Don't Hex and Drive. It's funny, I didn't think I was going to like this book because it starts with some hoity-toity vampire in a sports car hitting the very sweet witch Isadora. Not too thrilled with that. He didn't even seem very contrite in the beginning, and I thought, gosh, I am not going to like this book at all. Well, the series overall I have really enjoyed. It follows 6 sisters in New Orleans. They each have their own special book, and they each fall in love with either a werewolf, a vampire, or a Grim Reaper. It's been a lot of fun learning about each sister as an individual, what she brings to the table in terms of her special traits as a witch. Juliet Cross can really write a good love scene, and the intensity and passion that she puts into her writing really shows. I find myself caring about pretty much all the characters in this world that she's created, and I have really come to enjoy this series. But as I said, my favorite is this book, Don't Hex and Drive. Our main character here is Isadora Savoy. She is a conduit, which means that she can take magic from anywhere and she can put it into something or someone in order to help them heal. She does this with plants, people, animals. She's like a healer, and she is a lovely person inside and out. She's very shy. She has some anxieties, and enter Devraj Kumar. He seems to be her opposite in every way. He's super outgoing. He's tall, dark, and handsome. I would never have thought in a million years that I would fall head over heels for a vampire. Not just a vampire, I should say. He is a vampire warrior, a Stygorn. He's also a famous Bollywood actor. Initially, I thought he was just some materialistic, shallow, dominant type. He is so much more. He has such an incredible backstory. He doesn't want to do harm to anyone. He likes to protect the weak. He's courageous. He is compassionate. He is caring. He is giving. I adore this man, and he's easy on the eyes too. This book was so much fun. I talked about this in my fun romance book experiences video. I so thoroughly enjoyed the ending. There were these great 80s songs that were played, and the way that he woos her in the very end is just so much fun. I had a huge smile on my face. And of course, again, as I'm thinking about it now, just a 5-star book. Number 2 was really close to 5 stars, 4.5, Karen Marie Monning's Into the Dreaming. This is book 8 of the Highlander series. This was only 3 hours long. I thought the narrator did a super job. I would call this a fantasy, I believe. The story begins roughly 1,000 years ago in what is present-day Scotland. Aidan McKinnon is a clan leader who is sort of abducted by an evil fairy king. The king says, "I will spare your clan if you stay with me for 4 years." Well, Aidan agrees to do it, but he doesn't realize that 4 fairy years is actually 400 human years. During that time, the king warps the mind of Aidan. Aidan actually forgets who he even is and becomes Vengeance, someone who the fairy king uses to just do his bidding across the world. There's a fairy queen who is also overseeing all of this, and she wants Aidan to be free and to be with his soulmate, who was actually born like 1,000 years later. She realizes, though, that the only way that she can get them connected before they can actually meet is in their dreams. I love the idea that as a human being, in your dreams, you might accidentally be bumping into fairies in real life. Well, this woman, Jane, who is a present day gal, she's a struggling author. She has spent her entire life dreaming about Aidan McKinnon, not knowing that he was a real person. And one day a tapestry arrives at her home. It is the exact vision of Aidan on this tapestry, which blows her mind because she's never seen him out of her dreams. She falls asleep against the tapestry and is then transported back in time to Scotland roughly 400 years ago. Or maybe it was the 1400s. It was a long time ago. It was before it was actually Scotland. Well, they're both in this castle and the villagers welcome them. This was adorable. I loved seeing the villagers help them rebuild this castle. He, as I said, is vengeance, so he's super bristly. He's only supposed to be away from the king for 1 month, but Jane single-handedly undoes his brainwashing. This guy doesn't even remember what kissing is, so she has to teach him quite a few things, and I was here for it. I found Jane to be incredibly hilarious. I loved how spunky she was. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars is because he kept leaving, because he was just sort of discombobulated. So he would just leave and sort of work things out in his mind and then come back, and I was just like, can you just please stay in the castle? But otherwise, I thought this was great. I cannot wait to read books 1 through 7 of this series. Number 3, 4.5 stars, The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I was blown away by this book. It was just lovely. We have Florence Day. She is a ghostwriter for a very famous author. Think like Debbie May Comer, Stephen King level. And she's been doing a lovely job, but nobody knows that she's a good writer. Nobody knows that she's somebody because she's been ghostwriting for someone else. Well, she doesn't believe in love anymore herself. And so she has been really dragging her heels about writing this new book that's supposed to be due out. And she's decided she doesn't want to do a happy ending. She doesn't want to do a love story anymore. And she goes to tell her brand new editor, who is like the hottest man alive. And he says, no. You're going to do that love story for me. You're going to give me that happy ending. And no, I'm not extending your deadline. You need to get it done. Like yesterday. So she's very unhappy with this. Unfortunately, her father passes away. So she has to go to her old hometown where she has avoided for a very long time. These people never liked her because they found her to be weird. Why did they find her to be weird? Because she can talk to ghosts. So could her father, who was a funeral home director. She actually grew up in a funeral home talking to ghosts. It's much more lighthearted than maybe it sounds. But as she is trying to deal with the death of her father and come together with her family, who she's been estranged from for a while, who shows up at her door but her editor? And he's a ghost. He has unfinished business, and it's with her. He actually helps her go through this small town filled with colorful characters, helping her prepare for her father's funeral. And as this is happening, they begin to fall in love. I thought this was darling. There were so many surprises at the end that I did not see coming that I'll share at the end of this video, if you don't mind spoilers. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought this was a lot of fun. It's a great small town romance. I have never read a ghost romance before. It was not the weirdness that I was afraid it would be. It was just very sweet and lovely, and I enjoyed it immensely. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars is because it kind of sagged a little bit in the middle for me. They sort of went over the same ground about why she didn't want to come home to her small town and why people didn't like her. So that was kind of gone over maybe a little too much. So, and there was one loose end that I thought could have been tied up a little bit better, but I'll share that at the end of the video. Number 4 with 4.5 stars, Witches Get Stitches. That's the 3rd book in the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. I was actually really nervous that I wasn't going to like this book because it has Violet, who in the first 2 books is basically, she's just this really hard-nosed, rough and tough, rough-edged, swears like a sailor gal, and I didn't really feel like I would connect well with her. I couldn't have been more wrong. I fell in love with Violet. Yes, she does curse like a sailor. However, she has a heart of gold. She cares about so many people. She loves deeply. She has fantastic empathy and compassion for the werewolves who take forefront in this story. They have been brushed aside by supernatural society because they've had such a difficult time controlling some of their werewolf tendencies. If they get upset, they can just become a werewolf at any time, which makes them ostracized by the rest of supernatural supernatural society, and Violet believes that she can change this. And I love that she really works to make things better for the werewolves. She's courageous, she's strong, she's brave, she's smart. I really liked her, and I loved Nico. He is a gorgeous, gorgeous werewolf who has a lovely singing voice. He's got all the girls' attention, but he and Violet have a bit of a history, and I was very happy to see their friendship bloom into love. He's loved her from afar for a very long time, and it was just so much fun seeing them really make it in the end. There was a rival wolf pack that kept things interesting. Maybe the ending wasn't quite as exciting as I hoped, but it really did make sense in the end, and I really did enjoy this. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars is because it was a little more primal and than I liked in some of the love scenes. But again, she's with a werewolf, so I suppose that comes with the territory, I think, is what I'm learning. So, not quite my cup of tea, but very, very close. Number 5. This one has gotten a lot of buzz. Angelika Frankenstein Makes Her Match. I gave this 4 stars. If I don't think of it as a romance novel. As a romance novel, I would probably give it like 1 star. And I say that because almost none of the characters are very likable for most of the book, which makes it very difficult. It was also extremely difficult to root for the relationship between Angelika and the man that she creates, Will. So let me explain my reasoning. Several years ago, I listened to Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It was narrated by Dan Stevens, who is the fabulous Matthew Crowley in Downton Abbey. He did a great job. I was really surprised though, because I was thinking of this book as a scary Halloween story, but in reality, it was just very sad. It made me sad and mad on behalf of the monster who Victor creates. I found Victor to make one poor choice after another. Sometimes he was just dumb, I'll just be honest. I couldn't believe how little he cared for the person that he created. It made me angry on behalf of the monster. So when Sally Thorne, in her version of this story, when the monster is created and Victor looks at him and goes, "I am abruptly bored with you," or something to that effect, I felt like clapping and giving a standing ovation. I was like, somebody gets it. Primarily though, this book is about Angelika Frankenstein. She is Victor's younger sister. She has been under his shadow. She's been like his assistant for basically her entire life. The two of them were very much stunted in their emotional growth because of the death of their parents. They are wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. They are shallow, superficial, self-centered. They keep to themselves on this little hill, and they enjoy scientific experiments. Anything that Victor wants, Angelika believes. He's the one that dictates what they both do. And she's been content with this because she's also very shallow and she just wants to be adored. So when Victor decides he's going to create a human out of pieces of people, she decides she's going to do it too. Victor wants to do it for acclaim and scientific prowess. She wants to do it because she wants to create someone who will adore her. No one in the village is willing to touch her because she's awful. She's awful. And Victor's fiance comes. She's pretty awful. There's another gentleman that starts to be interested in Angelika. He's pretty terrible too. There's a priest who's also awful. Most of these characters are just terrible. The one who shines is Will. Will is the person that Angelika creates. What Victor and Angelika didn't anticipate though is that Will would want to know who he was before he was created. He wanted to know if he was married. What did he do for a living? Does he have a family? He wants to know and he wants to get back to it. So there's a huge mystery to solve. There's also the question of how well did they create him? Is he going to live a long time? How will his quality of life be? There are all these things that no one really thought about before they decided to create human beings from parts of other human beings. It's very interesting in terms of like ethics and morality and even religion and spirituality. I didn't get a handle on where the author stood on religion or spirituality. It was very interesting. A lot to think about. The reason that I gave this 4 stars is because 1, I was fascinated with how different this was. I loved unraveling the mystery. It was very funny at different parts. And I will also say that at certain points I was so sick of Victor that I started reading this book at like 10 pages a day because I just couldn't stomach too much of him in a sitting. But I really wanted to press on because there were portions of this that were so deep. There were lines that were said that I just found so compelling. The thing that I also found really compelling about this is Angelika is a much better person at the very end of the book. It takes her pretty much till the end to become a decent human being. And why does she become a decent human being? Because of Will's love for her. He loves her and has faith in her when he really shouldn't. But his love and faith in her turn her into the person that he believed that she was from the beginning. And I loved that. In a way, it reminded me of the way a child can love a parent and just sort of see the parent as perfect. And Will saw Angelika as perfect, his creator. I just found it to be fascinating. I highly recommend this book if you want to think, if you want to see another spin on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but I do not recommend this if you're just looking for a fun rom-com, because that is not what this is, unless you don't mind also being aggravated for quite a lot of the book. Number 6 for me, Wolf Gone Wild. I gave it 4 stars. It's the first book in the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. Yes, I read 4 books of the 6 this month, so you're going to hear about another one in a minute. This one follows Evie. She is a hex breaker and Mateo needs her. He is a werewolf and he has a hex on him. His wolf, who is supposed to come out once a month, can't break free. So especially around the full moon, poor Mateo is going crazy because his wolf inside cannot get out. The wolf inside, by the way, is named Alpha. That's where this lost a star. I didn't like Alpha at all. I loved Mateo. He was a total cinnamon roll hero. I adored the dates. I loved how initially their relationship was about her breaking his hex, which she wasn't even sure she was going to do because witches weren't even supposed to really socialize with werewolves or help them, but she overcomes that to help him out. Then they become friends and then it develops into love. There are some super cute dates. I loved Evie's personality. I thought she was adorable. I loved how she was kind of nerdy and she wore fun t-shirts and she was just wonderful and brave and strong. And I just loved her so much. And I loved, as I said, Mateo, but I didn't love Alpha. He was very aggressive. He was very sexually aggressive. And as someone who is a cinnamon roll hero gal, not into the alphas. And this guy's literally named Alpha. I also loved that there was a mystery here trying to figure out who was the person that put the hex on Mateo. So I think I kind of figured it out like midway, but it was still very interesting to see how it was going to unravel. And I really enjoyed every moment. Well, almost every moment, except for the Alpha moments. Number 7 is my only historical romance of the month, Devil in Disguise. It is the 7th book in the Ravenel series. This was the 19th book of my 18-week challenge for my Lisa Kleypas summer. And this was the only book I had never read before. So I was really looking forward to this. I wasn't super fond of the insta-lust between Merritt and Keir. I did enjoy some of the mystery. There was one scene in particular that I did like. He develops amnesia at one point, and when he suddenly remembers Merritt and all of the 2 days or so that they had together, I really enjoyed his busting out of the carriage and racing back to the mansion on foot to be with her. I thought that was kind of compelling. Their relationship is built on practically nothing but attraction, which I didn't find to be very good. I also didn't care for the love scenes because, quite frankly, there wasn't always complete 100% consent going on, and he was a little sneaky, and I didn't care for that. The reason I gave it as many stars as I did is because of the wallflowers that were very much in the story. They made it for me. Sebastian and Evie, Marcus and Lillian coming back. I enjoyed every moment that one of those characters was in the book, and I'm hopeful for more Ravenels with more Sebastian, Evie, Lillian, Marcus, and any other wallflowers they want to throw my way. Number 8 at 3 stars, The Captive Merman's Promise by Zoe Castile. This book was part of the Peculiar Taste series, and I read this in an attempt to participate in the Love in the Night readathon, which was in October. I didn't get to do too much with it, but I did enjoy this novella. My common complaint with novellas is that they could be longer, and I have to say that unfortunately that's how I felt with this as well, but in a good way. I wanted to know more about the shadow market in which much of this story takes place, which has various supernatural characters in it. It reminded me of The Nightmare Before Christmas, where there are different doors that lead to each holiday and the door looks like that holiday. It was similar in the shadow market, where they had a different door that gave you an indication of what supernatural being was being held captive behind it. It was very interesting. I loved seeing all the supernatural characters. But this story is about Amada Palacios. She is a witch who has decided to take on her family's curse, which has gone back hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And what happens is the women in her family fall in love, and then the men that they fall in love with die. So Amada decided to forego love and just take the entire curse on so that the rest of her family could go on and live their lives. Unfortunately, though, the curse is starting to become extremely painful and go towards her heart. So she goes to a powerful warlock who she believes can break this curse. She's going to make a deal with him, but before she does, she meets the captive merman, Ronan. He's been there for a very long time. I don't think he could ever leave. And I'm not a big monster romance person. I did learn this month there's something I like less than monster romance, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. When I was discovering that this was going to be about a merman, which is evident in the title, so it was a quick discovery, I was sort of anticipating maybe something like this, turning into something like this, but it was more like this. However, having said that, I still found it very enthralling and somewhat beautiful. It was a little insta-lusty for me, but because there's magic, I mean, I almost was able to suspend belief and think, okay, these really are soulmates. But it really was like they saw one another and was like, bam, okay, we are super attracted to one another. And then right away, at their first opportunity, there's a love scene. But again, this is a novella. There's not much time. Biggest reason that this only got 3 stars from me is because there could have been so much more. I feel like this could have been a really fleshed out, twice as long story at least, and I would have been here for it. I really thought it was compelling how Ronan is trying to keep her from joining him and being captive. He loves her too much to let her ruin her life the way he ruined his. And because this is a romance novel, you know that somehow they're going to end up together in the end. I thought the ending was terrific. I loved it. I was kind of surprised actually in some of the things that happened. I thought it was a really good story. I just wish there was more of it. Number 9. I read half of this book, but it's 3 different stories, so I'm giving myself credit for the first story. This book is called The Cafe Between Pumpkin and Pie. I gave it 2.5 stars, which I guess I technically am only grading the first story. Julie of Spiritual Mama and I decided to buddy read this together, and I love how she said she thinks that we were catfished by the cover. And I was like, I think you're right. Actually, it did give me those really great hometown Halloween comfort vibes. I loved the old men sitting at the counter having lunch at this old, like a soda shop. I loved the characters. I loved the kids. My problem was, this is very similar to the DNF I did of Emily March's book. The problem is the love interest is this guy who is a really bad boy. The author is trying to pair him with this really sweet gal who works in this cafe, and she's got a thing for him, but she's hesitant because he was with her sister, who still hasn't gotten over it, even though she's married and has children. And the sister thought that when he left town, that she was going to take him with her. So he basically just left the sister, and he's come back all this time later. We're not even sure how long he's gonna stay. And yet the main character, the sweet gal at the cafe, starts to fall in love. He is constantly looking at her like a piece of meat. I just found it to be off-putting and kind of tonally odd. You've got this sweet small town, you're getting all those cozy vibes, and then you've got this sexually aggressive male that it just doesn't work for me. I was not a fan. And finally, I just decided to stop reading, especially after Julie said we could. Thanks, Julie. Okay, now it's time to talk about number 10. This is book 4 of the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. Always practice safe hex. This book is like root beer. Either you like it or you don't. And I don't. And I hate to say it because it's done very, very well. People love it. Here's my main problem with this book. The love scenes, if you want to call them that, are very, very rough. Anything where Livy, our main character, has to recover for like a week afterwards with the help of her sisters to heal her, I'm not super comfortable with that. Also, the irony of this title, Always Practice Safe Hex, and you know what that's a play on, at a certain point, he doesn't, and he doesn't even talk to her about it first. You actually hear her say, well, it's good that I guess I'm also on the pill. I'm like, oh boy. I was just so uncomfortable reading their scenes. You know, it's interesting. Somebody warned me that there was sexual assault and sexual harassment of Livy by a coworker in this book, but the worst things that are done to her are done by Gareth, who is her love interest. He's a Grimm, and he has quite a backstory. I think that's part of what's supposed to make him more compelling. He's grew up in the foster care system. He was totally misunderstood. And so I think being dominant in every situation, and I mean every situation, is something that helps him to feel safe. So I appreciate the complexities that the author tried to use here, but it just made me very uncomfortable. And I get that the difference between what happened to her by her coworker and what happened to her with Gareth is there was consent involved. There's a big difference there. The Grimm monster inside is just a little scary to me. So, you know, it's one of those things. If you like bondage and that sort of thing, I'm sure that you would love it. So great. But that for me, I realized like this is something that I'm less comfortable with than monster romance. It's just not my speed. This is like a motorcycle and I ride a bicycle. Or maybe a unicycle, I don't know. I also was a little disappointed because I feel like the main character, Livy, was sort of done a disservice. I found myself just really falling in love with all the other sisters and really getting to know them as people. With Livy, maybe I missed something, but I don't feel like I got to know her as well. The only thing I know about Livy is that she's an influencer and she works in PR, which almost feels a little unfair, but she says she never uses her influencing magic for that. I know that she's a snazzy dresser and that she's bisexual, but beyond that, I didn't really get to know her much more. I really did love the ending, and I liked Henry Blackwater, the cousin who is going to be, I'm sure, the love interest for Clara in the upcoming 6th book, which I'm quite excited about. I loved seeing Henry's abilities with magic, and I thought the ending was very interesting, but yes, not my cup of tea. My 11th book, coming in at just 1 star, is Dark Hunger by Christine Feehan. This was 4 hours long, and it barely had a plot or character personalities. I actually did this as part of my spooky vlog, which I renamed the Accidentally Hilarious Paranormal Romance. It was very campy. It was very over the top. He is a vampire. She is a shape-shifting jaguar. There are many really horrible things going on, such as kidnapping of her sister, as well as a bad vampire master who is hunting them. And yet neither of those things seem to be as interesting to them as they're finding time to make love with one another. I found myself laughing through much of it as he was changing from one animal to another, especially when he was a little cat. She was sending him messages in his mind of a sexual nature that overloaded his little cat brain, and he fell into a snake. It was a strange moment that is a great example of the rest of the book. It was bizarre. And now I'm going to talk about some of my other thoughts about these books. There are spoilers from now on, so if you want to read any of the books that I mentioned, maybe stop right now. But I just wanted to say a couple more things in case anybody was interested. I'm going to start with my second book that I talked about, Into the Dreaming. I thought one really neat thing about this was the twist at the end where the Fairy King actually wasn't even all that interested in Aidan McKinnon or having him come back as vengeance. The whole point of what the Fairy King did was to try to get the attention of the Fairy Queen so that she would then figure out a way to best him and then go to his lair so that he could then seduce her. He knew that she would only go to him in order to gloat because she won. So the Fairy King made sure she'd win and that she'd come to gloat about it. And that was his whole end game. What an interesting layer on top of everything else in the story. A little bit more about the dead romantics. At the end, we find out that he is not actually dead. He has been in a coma, which of course is lovely because then they can really start a relationship. Unfortunately, the author that she's been ghostwriting for had actually passed away. She even met the author as a ghost and didn't realize it. It was like a sixth sense kind of deal. Very interesting. But the author's nephew is our hero in the story, which was very fascinating. And he really wanted Florence to be the ghostwriter for his aunt. And he was aware that his aunt had passed away, but he was completing her wishes by having Florence write her stories for her. Sorry for all the pronouns. So the thing that kind of bugged me about this book, you never really got a sense of why he was sort of haunting her while he was in a coma when he was so far away. There wasn't really any reason for him to be with her per se, other than maybe they were soulmates. It's never addressed as to why he was with her. My hope was that her father was somehow maneuvering his soul to be near Florence and that she would then see the dad at the end. Apparently, our hero can see dead people at the end, just like Florence can. And I was really hoping that Florence's father would make an appearance as a ghost at the end and give them his blessing. But unfortunately, he never did come around. I guess he was all done and he had made his peace with everything, so he had gone on. Speaking of Beyond the Grave, I thought it was really cool that Henry Blackwater in Always Practice Safe Hex was able to bring people back from the dead to talk to the supernatural court. I am really hoping that in the 6th book, he will be able to bring spirits back again because I just think that aspect of a plot would be really, really interesting. So looking forward to seeing more of what Henry can do in the 6th book. Those were my 11 books and then some of my extra info. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you read any of these, what you thought. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're reading. Until next time, thanks so much. Take care. Bye.